All right, good morning, everyone. It's 9, so let's get the party started. Today we're going to talk about sad path testing and flash messages, and you can think of this as kind of like building onto our validations lesson yesterday. Now, they're definitely separate things, but they can work in conjunction with each other. And the things to think about here are, as a developer, I need to ensure that the data is correct, that the data is accurate. That's validations, right? I can use certain validations that I might have in conjunction with my user feedback and my application being able to handle user mistakes and then give them feedback. All right. And so we can think of the validations as, hey, I need my data to be accurate and I'm in control of my data as the developer. And then we can think of this sad path and flash messages as, hey, my user needs to be able to navigate my application fluidly and they need feedback when they make mistakes. Okay. Yeah, so the new vocabulary is just going to be sad path and flash messages. Yeah, and we'll kind of get into that. Just like a heads up of how today's going to go. I'm going to kind of walk through some of the lesson plan. The lesson plan isn't very long. And then there'll be like a pretty large chunk of time for you all to like go and try this out in your projects. And I'll have the room open if you want to like get feedback and have questions. And then there's like a couple of like, there's like a you do section where at the bottom where there's some stuff to do related to the project, but it's kind of like, I'm not giving you extra work. It's built into the stories as well. And then there's like an article to read and then the flash guides to read. And I would say probably doing those first is a good idea. But anyways, let's think. Oh yeah, and the last housekeeping thing is, yeah, we're going to start from the main branch of our setlist repo today. All right, so main should not have any of the changes that from Brian's partials lesson or my validation lesson. And so that's a good place for us to start for this lesson. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. So if we're the user and we're using an application, how do we generally figure out if we're doing it correctly or doing it wrong? What's a way that we can understand that? Go ahead, D.
Like the test fails.
Totally. So but that's like that. You're thinking of it more as a developer. As a developer, test fails. I understand. Hey, something is wrong with the way that my code works, right? But if you're just like if you're using Amazon to buy something, right? How do you know that you've done something correct or done something incorrect?
If I know that is correct, if I like get back what I expected to get back, but if I get any error messages or like get sent to a place that I wasn't trying to get to, then I would know.
Yeah, yeah. So you get feedback, right? You get what you expect to get back, and we can think of that as feedback as like happy path feedback. And then you also can get feedback if you end up doing something wrong, or you forget to fill something out, or you click the wrong thing. Then you'll probably get feedback in the other direction, sad path feedback. And so we're thinking about the sad path. Like so far in our applications, we've only really worried about the happy path. It's supposed to work this way. It's supposed to, when I click this, I get this. Great. Everything's great. But we have to account for things not always going swimmingly. Sydney, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I didn't. I was going to say the exact same thing B said.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. And then, yeah, V kind of touched on this other point of, as developers, we know our application isn't working properly when, when the test fails, right? That's the most common way, I'd say, but also if we're browser driving development and we don't get feedback that we expect, that's another way, but that's similar to what our user would see. So two separate ways to think about it. Okay, so went over happy path and sad path. talked about this. I don't think there's anything else that I want to say too much. I guess, yeah, the sad path, we have to think like we can't anticipate every single way our user is going to break the application, but we can try, right? We can try to anticipate every single way we think a user is going to break the application, and then test for our application being able to withstand those errors or those mistakes. Go ahead, Sydney.
I did have a question about like when you're in the workspace, like how do you, unless a user brings up those outliers, how are they finding those? Like that was kind of my question.
Yeah, great question. You can think of it as edge case testing, right? So sad path testing is a form, I would say, of edge case testing. We have to think of the scenarios where something goes wrong, right? Like, okay, so there's a form and they forget to fill out a necessary attribute. That's a very common way. We're going to go through that way in class. What about when you fill out your payment information, you accidentally click submit or pay twice, right? You double click it, you do a little fat finger there. Can your application handle when two requests are sent that are the exact same with the exact information, that we stop one and we only process the other? Is that possible? Have we created a test to ensure that that is the functionality of our application, right? You have to think, we're trying to think up these issues ahead of time with the reality of knowing that there are always going to be issues that we don't foresee. And when they pop up, and we want to find as many issues as we can ahead of time before our user finds them. And inevitably our user will find some, right? So it's kind of like, let's build up our application to be strong against user error, and know that we're going to have to make tweaks as more people start to use our application. Cool. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. Yeah, let's, here's what I want to do. So this is going to be our test. And well, this is our user story, but I want to put it in our test. Let's see. Yeah, got it here. It's going to go in new spec. Cool. Can create a new artist. Okay, that's the happy path up there. And we can even write this just to be clear. Happy. Everything went well. But now we have to have a way to give it a sad path. And so what I'll do is comment this out and start creating the story from here. So as a visitor, it looks like that's already in this describe block, and I'm not going to get out of that. I visit the new form. Yeah, so here we go. I visit the new artist page. Those two things seem to be taken care of already. Yeah, go ahead, Gus, what's up?
Just real quick, can you clarify, like when you're talking specifically about sad path versus like edge cases, sad path testing is referring specifically to testing that it gives you a message, right? Is that accurate?
Not necessarily always, but certainly most of the time. So sad path testing is giving your application a way out when a scenario that you are able to think up on your own that your user could potentially make as a mistake. We've thought up a scenario where, hey, things didn't go as well as we thought. Here's some feedback, and here's the page that we expect you to be on now.
Okay, so there's some, like if you were to talk about sad path testing versus edge case testing, like there's some overlap in what you're talking about effectively.
Absolutely, and I would say sad path testing, you could say, is a type of edge case testing, and the edge case testing circle or bubble is much, much larger than just this like sad path.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So it looks like I've got my as a visitor when I visit the new artist form. Cool. And then I can create a new artist. Okay, so now maybe I do need some describe blocks here. So I might say, I'm going to put this in a describe block. This is basically the first part of this that is saying like, hey, I'm clicking create artist without filling in a name. And now I'm going to say, okay, this I'll put in my it block, or I don't think I did that right now. Do end. Cool. Let's put all of this in quotes and then say it, and then another do end. And this is like a lot of times the way that I will do things. Like I'll say like, look at this user story. I can just break this thing down, right? I can break this thing down to be part of my test. So I think I'll just combine these two statements, and this is kind of a long it block, but for the purposes of today, I'm like, hey, this is what should happen when all of this stuff goes either wrong or goes right. Those need to be lined up. Those need to be lined up. Okay, cool. So now I'm in this it block, and now I can start figuring out the test. So let's do, yeah, let's basically grab all of this, right? Because this is what I'm going to be doing. This is going to be like my path for the user. And really what I could do is I could do away with these two steps, right? I can say, actually, I don't want to click the link to new artist and go through all of that. Let's just go to this path in general. So let's go to artist new. I don't need this expectation anymore. This is where we should be. Cool. And now the difference is I'm not going to fill in a name, right? I'm going to skip this. Cool. And then when I click on create artist, I'm going to, what do I need to expect? I want some kind of content, right? So I want to expect my page to have content. Yeah, missing required information seems relevant. I kind of like this. Forget what AI program am I using that someone recommended?
Tab9.
Tab9. Okay, yeah, pretty good so far. And yeah, so let's be a little bit more specific. Artist not created. And then yeah, we'll put that. And then what else? What else? So okay, yeah, and then we expect to still be on the same page. And the way that we'll set that expectation is we'll expect to have this create artist button again. All right. So now let's make this my sad path. Cool. All right. I feel good about this. But before we do this, I want to look at a couple of things. I want to look at my artist controller. Okay. This is going to be in my create. All right. So I'll take artist params in there. And then let me look at my artist model and make sure that things are the way that I expect. Cool. Okay, so I don't have any validation yet. So I want to use my validation in conjunction here. And I'm going to say validates name presence true. That seems like it should work. Okay, cool. So we just want to make sure that it has a name. Cool, cool, cool. That sounds all right. And let's actually comment this out just so I can see what happens when, actually no, I want to comment this in and I want to see what happens right now on the page. I have this validation. I'm going to try and create an artist and we'll see what we get as a user. Okay, cool. I can spin that up. Let's go here to localhost. Cool, looks like we're running okay. And I'm going to artists, new. Great, okay. So let's look here. And if I create an artist with no name, let's see what happens. Interesting. Looks like it went to this page and possibly an artist with no name got created. It's hard for me to tell. I've got a couple no name artists I can see down here, but I'm not sure if I just created a new one or if that's from earlier. So let me delete these. And I think that makes sense. Yeah, so let's go back to new artist. Let's try it again. Okay, now I can see, all right, these are all the artists that I expect to have there. It doesn't look like a new one got created, right? But the user doesn't get any feedback, okay? The user doesn't see that. The user has no way to know what just happened. James, go ahead.
I was just going to talk from a developer point of view. Like, I think here, normally I check the Rails server log and it shows me if it rolled back or committed, but you're from a user perspective, so you can't see that.
No, but this is a good thing to point out, and I'm glad you did. So the server has a lot of information in it. That this is another one of those things where it took me a while as a developer to watch my server, and I think it was actually in mod 2 where I was pairing with this guy that works at Stitch Fix that was like on campus for a week helping us, and he's like, "Can you just have the server on the screen when you like submit this request on this form so I can get that feedback?" And I was like watching it. I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot going on here that I was just overlooking. So moral of this tangent is look at the server when you're doing stuff in the browser, and it's going to give you feedback. It's going to give you information. All right. And so similar to what James said, we've got this begin rollback here, right? Okay. Because it doesn't, looks like it doesn't, something happens, a rollback happens in our database, and then we get redirected to the artist. And yeah, that sounds, yeah, that's what's going on here. So what do we want to do? Okay, I want to show you this in Pry. That's what I want to do. Let's look at this create. Cool. And so another thing about this tab 9 that I've been noticing, so if let's just run through this again. I have the Pry shortcut. I type Pry and it's like, and I tab and it's like, hey, do you want this? I'm like, no, I do not. So I command Z, then I tab again, then I can get my snippet is kind of like how I figured out how to work it. But yeah, anyways, let's see if we can hit this. Cool, looks like we're spinning. We're in the server. Okay, so let's see what happens when I do 15. So I'm playing line 15 here. Cool. Unpermitted parameters. That's not exactly what I was expecting. But I get this object returned and I have a nil, right? Like this ID is nil. The created at and updated at are both nil, and I don't have a name parameter. So it didn't work. And I probably need to figure out what's going on with these parameters, and I will. But anyways, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, so this is the way that I can tell what happened, but there's no way for my user to tell what happened here, right? So something to note, when the create without the bang runs and fails for whatever reason, it's going to give you back the object that was kind of like run under the hood, because remember, create is a combination of new and save. So it'll give you the return value of basically the new as your return value if it does not save correctly. All right. So if I did a create bang here, let's do that. Let's see what that will do. Artist params. This time I get active record, record invalid, validation failed, name can't be Blake. So if I do it with the bang, now I get back some feedback of like, hey, why isn't this creating correctly? And here it is, this is why. All right, so that's the difference between the bang and the not bang. Again, I know we've gone over that a few times. It's worth mentioning. And yeah, any questions coming up so far about like what I'm doing in here, what create does, what the bang does? Okay, so I think that's all I want to show you there. Yeah, okay. Let's run this test. I'm going to get out of that. Yeah, I probably need to, I'll just shut down my server because now I'm going to start running tests and I need to get out of pry. Cool. So let's run our test and let our test be our guide now from this point. So I got to see like some things going wrong, but now I have a new spec. So TDD is my friend, and I'm going to see if I can just get this to run. So it is this new spec line 22. Features, artist, view. Let's just see what goes wrong here. Cool. So it looks like I get all the way down to my expectation. So both of these two things can run. My visit and my click on look like they run okay. I get to this expect page, doesn't find it. It's like, hey, this is the stuff that I have. I have new artists, sort by name reverse, but I don't have this stuff that you're asking me to show you, which is artist not created, missing information. Okay, so now what I want to do, let's hit a pry again. Okay, I'm in this pry. Now, instead of doing in this artist.create, let's do an artist.save. So let's take this, let's assign it to A, and let's do this artist.new, remember, because create is a combination of new and save. Let's do A is assigned to artist.new. Okay, great. Let's do A.save. A different return value, right, than our create. Create gave us that empty object, basically, the initialized object. Save is going to give us this Boolean. This Boolean we can work with. This Boolean provides us a path to, or this Boolean provides us the point where we can fork our paths and say, happy path, sad path. Did you save? Did you not? I don't know. We'll see. So in the case that it doesn't save, now I'm like, all right, this is what I want, and I want to branch using maybe some if logic in the case that it doesn't save. So I'm going to get rid of this, put in my artist. This is the first thing that's going to happen. Second thing is going to be A.save. And this is where I want to branch, right? So I want to say if A.save, we're all happy. Let's redirect to the artist path. Cool. Show all artists, else. And this is probably where I want to say, now I want to create some feedback, right? I've got access to this object up here if I want it, and I want to create some feedback for the user. So how can I do that? I can use the flash. And so the flash is a specific type of, let's say this wrong. I feel like it's a specific type of session. Let's see, is Brian here? I think you might have talked. Oh, hey, am I saying that right? Flash is a specific type of session. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, right? Not cookie.
I'm not entirely sure, but the sessions are implemented with cookies. So it is going to be a cookie, but we haven't been over it either in class, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so we've taken out the like authentication part of this mod, and we'll get it in next mod. But basically you can think of sessions as a way that we're remembering users, and the flash is a type of, we'll say, session and cookie. It's a special piece of data that can be sent as part of the response, but it's like a kind of like it's its own. We'll think of it as its own special thing that you can you have access to in your controllers and your views that you can send along as part of a response. Cool thing about the flash is it behaves just like a hash. All right, so I can say flash, and you just have access to this by default. It's built in, and then I can say error, and I can assign my error to be, well, what do I want it to be? Probably want it to be whatever this test is saying it should be. So I can use that. Artist not created, missing information, cool. And then now I need to make a decision, right? Because when it saves, I redirect to the artist index. When it doesn't save, I need to figure out what I want to do from here. I know what I want to do. I want to render this form again, right? So we were in the new when we were in the new form when we sent this post to the create method. So what I want to do is restart that process. I want to render the new form, give you another chance to send this post to this method with all of the required information, all right, with the name filled out. So that's why I want to do this. So I can do this, I think, yeah, pretty sure. And yeah, let's see what we get here. Bang out of this, get rid of this pry, and let's see what we got. Okay, still get the same error. Artist not created, missing required information. But if I look at this a little deeper than my last error, expected to find this text in name. Whereas before, my error message was expected to find this text in, and then it gave me some different text that was on the page. And so the difference is here, we were on the index. We got redirected to the index. We hadn't set up our if else. But here, down here now, we are on the new. The new was rendered, and I can tell because the name text is on the page. All right. So I'm making some progress, even though I still get an error here. And the error is basically an issue where I haven't told my application I want to display flash messages. I have access to flash messages in my controller, in my view, but I haven't told any of my views to display them. So let's go do that. So if I go to application.html.erb, you have to think now, or we have to try to remember, this is something that is loaded for every single request response cycle. And this is where I put stuff that I want to be shown on every page. All right, so this is like, you can think like, I need a nav bar, this is where I would go. Alternatively, or also, we can put our flash messages here. So if I want to show each type of flash, then this is what I can do. We still have access to this flash object, right? And so I can say flash.each do, and since this behaves a lot like a hash, the key value pairs here are going to be the type of hash, and we can think of the type of hash as, let's look at this controller. This is my error. You can think of how I'm assigning this. My error is my key. My value is this message. So when I split this up, we can think of message. We can think of type as mapping to this key of error, and then this message mapping to whatever value is attached to any key. All right, and there's a couple of different types, but we'll focus on this one for now. Yeah, all we want to do here is display the message. So let's do that. Actually, I want to kind of wrap this a little bit in p tags, maybe. Oh no, this is too bad. All right, limitation. It's all right, maybe it'll get smarter. Cool, and then yeah, let's get this to be just a message. Cool, and then I'm in a block, so I need to end that block. Okay. That's it. I'm saying, hey, every time we load the page, check and see if there's a flash, or really just iterate over this flash hash and show me any messages that happen to appear. Any questions coming up on this, why I'm putting it in the application? Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
I was kind of playing around with it a little bit yesterday. What's the benefit of the flash? I did render new and I edited my view. So
So you did render new, and then you put this in your new view instead. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, but I didn't do flash though. I just did like I call the instance variable of the object, and then if it had any errors, and then I display the errors.
Cool. I'm interested to take a look in your strategy, because it's definitely a strategy. And then I would say that the strategy I'm implementing is another strategy. So it's not like it's not like you're wrong at all. It's just a different way to do it. And we'll take a look.
Okay.
Liam, go ahead.
I noticed whenever it runs through that render new part, it will you're still getting redirected to whatever the page was that it said redirect to, except it was just rendering whatever the page was that you told it to, but it doesn't actually give you that same address. So I had like an issue figuring that out whenever I was testing, and I was expecting to be on one page. It was displaying a different one, but
totally.
Yeah.
So this is a good scenario that we should actually go through in the browser so that we'll see it. But I'll show you what's happening there.
All right, cool.
Cool. Okay, let's take a break just because we've gone for like 32 minutes, and we'll pick back up at 37. Okay, what do I want to do? I want to run the test, right? I want to see if any of these changes that I made are actually going to work. So I assign a flash message. I tell my application to render that flash message, and I'm saying like, hey, this should be rendered on this new page. All right. So let's see if anything works. I don't think it's gonna, just to be clear. Oh, and it does. Interesting. Okay. So let's try and see this in the browser now. All right. So let's try and see what we've got. And let's also look at my artist or my new spec. So it looks like when I hit this action, it doesn't save because there's nothing in the form, right? I clicked on create artist without filling anything in here. And then, yeah, my content, artist not created, missing required information, happens to come back through via this flash error message that I set in this else, and via this render, okay? So yeah, cool. Let's look at it in the browser though. Yeah. Okay, remember, I'm not filling anything out here. I'm gonna hit create artist. And there it is. My flash message comes through, artist not created, missing required information. Great, that's what I wanted. So back to Liam's point, my path does not say artist new anymore, right? It says /artist. And the reason that is the case, because if we look at our dev tools here, and yep, this is the tab I want to be on, is network. When I hit create artist, I need to go zoom out a little bit. The request that was sent here, let's not pay attention to anything except artists. All right, when I'm looking at the network tab, I'm able to look at requests that have been sent. All right, so let's look at the artist requests. Remember, this is a post. When I hit this button, it's a post. It goes to artists is my URI. And this looks like it was a 200 okay. So everything went swimmingly. There's a lot of other information in here. You can look at my response. Cool, that's great. But the thing to really think about here is when I hit create artist, let me pull this up next to it. I came in here to this create method, right? So it's a post to /artists. And if it saves, I redirect with a brand new request back to a get artist. If it doesn't save, I flash my error message and then I render new. All right. So I'm basically overriding any default rendering that could have happened here. And I'm saying, hey, render this new spec. But remember, render does not send a new request. So this is why my path looks the same as it did on my original request, which was a post to artists. Liam, does that help clear things up?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Alex, what's up?
What is the actual advantage of rendering there instead of just like redirecting to the application new path?
Faster. Yeah, no request response or no request response cycle required. Just, hey, render this layout. Boom, we're done. We're within the same request response cycle, and then we say, hey, we're not going to redirect and start this whole process over again. We're just going to render as my response this new template. Boom, done. Sandra, I saw your hand go up. Something still on your mind?
I had the same question.
Okay.
I guess so if you still could do it with a redirect and have that message, it's just faster. So.
Yeah, and another thing to note is redirect will cause the flash to act slightly different. All right, and so let's do that. Let's see what it does. Actually, I'm going to see what it does, but let's do hands first. Max is next.
I was just going to ask why on that logic we use like any redirects, and why don't we just render views always?
Sometimes you need the redirect to happen because we need to restart the request response. If we think about the redirect that happens when we do this create and it does save correctly, when we send this redirect to artists, remember that's another GET request up to this index action. We need this artist.all to load again because we want it to load with our new artist displaying that we just created, right? So the only way to do that is with another request response cycle that hits the index, that doesn't just render the index page, but actually hits the request, hits the action, loads up artist.all on that request, and now has our new artist that we just saved within all of the artists that have been loaded up.
Gotcha. So it's a way to run the code in the controller for that. Is that okay?
Yep. Cool. Let's go to James next.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So like on my project, I'm using form with, and then I'm calling on the model at application. If I did a SAD path and I did render new, it doesn't know what at application is because it doesn't redirect, it doesn't re-render. So would I have to use a redirect there instead of a render? Or is there a way to like say what at application is?
I see what you're saying. I believe you can pass at application as part of the render. So you can pass the render, the object that you want to be at application on that next, on that current response.
Okay, so almost like as an argument.
Yeah, it's like an option that you can pass it or not. And so what that would look like here, right, is it would be this object, right? So I could do something, I think it's like this, and then A is like the other thing that I'm passing. But I would want this to be whatever whatever instance variable my view expects. So for you, you would want this to be like application. You would want to pass it application. I don't know if this is the exact syntax, but it's something similar to this.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. Ryan, go ahead.
I'm just curious. So we have like buzzwords called like SRP and keeping our actions skinny and stuff. Does this create action follow single responsibility principle when you add this error?
I believe it does, because we need a chance for this create action to fail, and we need it to have a chance to succeed, right? Both of those things are possibilities within this create action, and our single responsibility is attempting to create a new resource.
Okay. And so for keeping our actions skinny, would we put this if else inside of another function, or is it perfectly okay to have lots of if else's? Like potentially if you had every action had like an error message, this could get a really ugly really quickly.
Totally. So we'll go over some ways to dry those up. And for the sake of this create action, where there's only kind of two options, where it's one or the other, this is okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And just another real quick thing to look out for is, I would say, less about the amount of conditional branches and more of like the code inside them. So like if that code inside that if was more than just a redirect to artist, like if you had 5 lines of code in there, you might want to break that part out into its own helper method. But I think usually we don't need to, the if else inside the action is pretty common.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one other thing to add, would we ever have like an errors class that would the class errors that would just handle, like have all like a bunch of helper methods for each of our errors or something like that? Or is that too much?
No, so that's not too much. So for the purposes of what we want to do in mod 2, the built-in dot errors that we get on our models, the built-in flash, and then giving it the key of error, this is going to be enough. And when you get into a production application where there are many more paths and many more types of errors, you might want to think about doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, some hands went up, some hands went down. Any other questions coming up? Yeah, Sydney, go ahead.
So I guess my question is it rendering, like right now we're only asking for this name field, so it's rendering, but like if you had additional fields, so like let's say you filled out all of them but one, would the render save the data you've already, since it's going back to that exact same page, would it save what you've already input, or is it refreshing? Because like the redirect was refreshing. So I guess I'm just wondering, is that why you render as well?
So I like how you're thinking, like you're like, well, I want to show the user the stuff they did get right with with their original form attempt. And you can do that if you do it a specific way where you send the object back. So this A object here, similar to what I was showing James, if I send this back and I'm using a specific type of form, like a form with or a form for, then there's a way to repopulate the form with the data that I did get right and the error right there where I want it to be on the form of what I got wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not showing y'all exactly how to do that because that's one of the push. We want to kind of like push y'all to try and implement that by looking up some docs. Yeah, Isabel, go ahead.
Could you semi-explain, like if you're using a form with and you're going to send back the information that they've already filled out, I get on the method, you're going to send back whatever variable that you have assigned in that create method. But then how would you do that on the new view?
Yeah. Yep. So that this is assuming that within our artist new view, let's pull that up. This is assuming that we're not using a form tag here, right? So let's get rid of this. This would be like if we would use a form with, and then we're passing our form with. Come on, do what I want. An at artist, right? And then these are going to be different, but they're going to be kind of attached. Basically, now this object is going to be like helping fill out these specific fields. Whatever the artist columns will now work in conjunction with the artist fields here that I've defined. And if I pass it as part of my render, let's get rid of all these. Yeah. Okay. Then what I can do here is now I've got, let's pretend this is at artist, or not pretend, let's make it artist. And then I pass it at artist here. And now this object that got all of these params is this object I'm passing back to the new when I render. And now all of the params that were correct will be attached to the form. And there is some other special syntax you can use to also show the errors on the specific attribute.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey, Tim, I think real quick to you'd have to update line 15, the a.save.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. So then this would be the way that I could and I would have to update, these aren't going to work anymore because these are no longer tags. So I'd have to get rid of these. I forget exactly. I think maybe if I just got rid of all of these, but we're not going to go down this path, but it'd be something like this. And now this form with works in conjunction with this object that I'm passing. Cool. These are really good questions. These are this is what I want to talk about. So appreciate y'all. Okay, the thing that I was gonna do before I made all these crazy changes is I'm gonna see how this works. Yeah, we can just get rid of this. Yeah, I want to do redirect here. Let's redirect to artist new. All right, so this is a little different, right? We're not just rendering the new now. Now we're saying, hey, request response cycle, take over. And now we're going to hit this new action again. We're going to render this form newly again. All right. So let's see. Yeah, maybe we want to see this actually in the browser. See what happens. Okay. So let me reload artist new. And I don't have anything to write anymore. That should be right. Shot. Okay. So I would love for this flash to go away, but I think part of the reason, yeah, let's restart the server. Okay. All right, cool. I'm at square one. I've got the new artist form here. No flash messages showing. Now I want to see what possibly will happen here. And let's maybe get rid of the dev tools and the things that I want you to focus on Let's think about what's happening with the path. Let's think about what's happening when I hit create, right? When I hit create artist, I'm hitting this. And since I'm not going to fill out this name, this is the code that's going to run, right? And this redirect will run. All right, so let's see. Cool, I get this flash message again. Now let's like navigate somewhere else. And also my path is artist new because it was a full redirect, right? So now my path has updated correctly. So let's maybe go to a get now. Okay, so it doesn't persist. It's not that different. Let's see, let me change it back to a render. There is a scenario, the scenario I'm working to create is there's a scenario where the flash sticks around longer than you want it to. Basically one extra request. And that is kind of like what we're trying to avoid. All right, so let's go to new artist. Great, let's get the flash. Cool. Now since I'm rendering, look at my path. It's artist because it's from the previous post request. And then, yeah, let's run a get now on it. See. So now after that get with this render new, my flash message has persisted to this next request. Okay, so I've rendered it, great. That's nice, that was part of my post request. But then my next request, the flash is persisting, it's sticking around. And I don't necessarily want that to happen. So one of the ways that I can prevent that from happening, I can use a flash.now. Let's pass it error. That's not how that works. I know it works this other way, so let's do it this way. Flash.now.error. And then I'll pass it, I think, this. Cool, so different syntax, you can also do this. This is totally valid, similar to the way that I did it before. But the big thing I'm adding is this .now, which is gonna, in theory, make my flash not persist past this request. All right, so let's give it a shot again. Let's restart my server. I've done a lot of things to confuse it. So let's just start from square one. Okay, now let's go to new artist. Great. Let's hit create artist. Yeah, I didn't do it right. Let's look at the syntax. It is an equal, my bad. So it's similar, you're still assigning it similar to the way that you would a key like this. All right, one more time. Go to the new. Okay, I got my form. See if I can get things to work the way I want. I still can't. What did I do? Undefined method error. One more time. I am bad at syntax apparently, but it is like this. Okay. See, even I struggle with the Rails syntax. I can't remember everything. I have to look at docs too. Okay, let's see if we can get it to work. Let's look at the code again. The difference is my flash.now instead of just flash error. All right, and then I'm rendering new. So it's part of this request response cycle that is the post. Cool. Get my flash message right away. Very nice. In theory, it will go away when I click enter here and do a get request to artists. And it does. All right. That causes the now causes it not to persist to the next request. If you do the now, I believe, and the redirect, I don't think you're going to see it at all, but let's try that. So in this scenario, I'm sending the request response cycle again. I don't think I'll see it, but that's why we try things out. Okay. Yeah, this time, now I'm using the now with a redirect. The flash never gets displayed because once I restart the request response cycle, sorry, the flash did not persist for that second request based on the way that now works. If I want this to work, I can do the flash error. Then I get it. Yeah, go ahead, Max.
Yeah, could you pass with the redirect? Could you pass flash?
You can, yeah. So that's another way to do it, where you can do, let me find the how. You can pass it as a redirect. I know you can. Yeah, okay, cool. Cool, so the way that I could do that here is instead of having this line, I'll grab my message, pass it as an option here, and this will be error. So, and then this will be my string. All right, and I can pass it as error. I can pass it as notice. I could pass it as alert. All right, these are types of flash that are kind of like built into Rails. And another thing I can do is I can assign my own key if I want. All right, I can assign my own key to the flash. So let's see it this way. Still works. Now I'm just doing it a little bit differently with this redirect. Okay. Which is convention? Probably your company will have a convention. I would say like your company will do it one way or the other, and everyone will write it that way, and that will be convention for you. But Rails gives you like many ways to do things, so you kind of have to start choosing that. Just so it's like a little less confusing, because you just don't want to have like a bunch of different ways and controllers that make life harder on the devs that are coming in. Okay, so 10:03, cool. So this is what I want to do. So I want you to build in your own break, but what I want you to do is this you do section now down here. Get it to come up. You might have to reload this because I pushed this up this morning, but there are some things for you to do in this you do section of the lesson. And I think this is a good place to start, even though it's, I obviously didn't put these bullets in the best order, but I would maybe start here if you like to read about things and then try. And then, yeah, let's do this. Get as far as you can. I'll leave the room open. You can work on your own or in the study hall, and I'll be around for questions as they come up. Yeah, let's plan on coming back together at like 10:50 and seeing what y'all came up with. Sound okay? All right, cool. Y'all go do. I think I'll just leave the room open. No reason for me to close it.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep, thank you.
I think you're still sharing yours.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder.
Okay, so I put the ID here, and then I did within here. And I'm still getting that the text is not there, but if I go to the browser, it is there.
Gotcha. Submit application, field cannot be empty. Okay. let's see what we want to do first. Let's do a save and open page. Cool, yeah, let's inspect this. All right, I want to see the form, yeah, the entire form, like below new application. Yeah. Okay, let's go over. You can click on the right side. You can like click those down arrows, yeah, until we like kind of scroll until we get to where we want. So let's go to that section ID new application. So you got to click that down arrow up. It's kind of like popping up and not popping up. So if you click the down arrow, yep, and then see that section ID new application, let's click on that. So let's click on that HTML element so it's highlighted of the section.
From here, in here?
Nope, so where you were.
Here?
Yep, but just one line up. Cool, click on that. Okay, so now it's highlighted and we see that that this is indeed our ID, right? New application. And at this point, let's look at your test and see what it's trying to look at. So it looks like if we look at where you're trying to do this within, a field cannot be empty, that a field cannot be empty is not showing up within that block, right? It's showing up outside of that block. How do I know? Well, I highlighted the block and I looked and saw what was in it, right? And I can see a field cannot be empty up there, but it's outside of that block. So your flash message is just not showing up within that area that you've kind of targeted on the page. Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to me that it's outside if the ID is wrapped on a section and the submit tag is here.
Totally. So you're not ever hitting that submit. You're not hitting the submit expectation on line 25 because it's failing on line 24. So you never get to 25. If you comment out line 24, your test will pass.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that's because the flash message is up there. You put the flash in application layout, right? Which is a different part of the page than your form. If you wanted the flash to show up within that section, you would have to iterate over the flash within that section in your new.html.erb, and then it would show up.
Yeah, that went right through my head.
Okay. So yeah, I'll let you go.
So my understanding was that if you give an ID to a section, that whole section has that ID. Is that correct?
You've got it.
Okay. So if the whole section has that ID, oh, okay. So this has nothing to do with the error message.
Correct.
This line here.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're targeting it kind of does because you're targeting it with your within, but that a field cannot be empty is located in a different section, right? It's a different part of the page. So it's not showing up in there because your flash isn't designed to show up in there.
Okay, and then you're saying that if I wanted to design, I'm gonna have to put some iterate through the error messages here or in the application HTML?
Well, if you wanted the test to pass, you would have to, the way that you've designed this test, then you would have to iterate through the flash within this specific section because that's the test that you've set up. However, I would say that's not like the best use case because you want to keep your flash in that application .html.erb. You want to keep that so that it persists across your application, right? So what you need to do instead is write another test that targets a different part of the page that the flash is in. So you need to do it within and then target wherever the flash is. So give it an ID, give it a class name, give it something you can target, and then make sure that the flash content is within that part of the page.
Okay, 2 questions. Why do I need a separate test for that? It seems like this is testing just that. And where do I put that ID since I don't have that notice here?
Totally. So let's look at application. So in theory, you don't need it to be a different test. You just need this expectation, a field cannot be empty, to be outside of your within block in this right here, right? So you just need the expectation needs to live outside of your within block, and then it will pass just fine. And this would, I would say, like, this is fine. This is a good, this is a good enough test. Now, if you want this test to be better and you want this test to be more specific, now let's go to application.html.erb. Great. So we haven't assigned any ID here, right? We haven't assigned any section, but we can, right? You can wrap the entire Flash iteration process in a section, or if you wanted, you could assign that paragraph tag an ID.
Okay.
Cool.
And come here and change the, wait, let's change the within to error message.
Well, let's think about this now, how you've changed it. So now it's going to look within error message, and is the submit application button going to be in there?
No.
All right. So let's do this. Let's change back what you had in the test. Nope. So let's keep what you have there. Yep. Let's change back what you had in the test back to this. And this is a good thing to think about here. When you have a passing test, we don't necessarily want to change that test, but we want to add on to what we have. So now I would say you need two within blocks. You need one that looks within your new application ID, and then you need another one outside of this within block. So in a different place that you put your Flash message expectation in. And this one will be like, hey, now I'm looking at this part of the page, which is my Flash message part of my page. And you called it error message, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. And now let's put our expectation for the Flash in there. Cool. And your do ends are a little messed up because we want those within blocks to be like separate. So put that end on 28 up above 25. Yeah. Okay. And now we're still a little screwed up. So this is where indentation will be helpful. So let's indent the ends that we expect to be. Yeah, I think we might just have one too many, honestly, but yeah. But this is where tabbing, like keeping your tabs, lined up, is going to be helpful, because that's like, yeah, it gets hard.
Yeah, I got used to Adam doing automatically, but apparently on Rails it doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay, so I did a second within, and why do I need this within then?
Well, I wouldn't say, like, the thing about within is, like, you don't necessarily need any of them, right? It's making your test more specific. It's a tool to help you target a specific part of the page, right? Because we can think of, like, our pages are going to get more complex than this. So we need a way to say, like, hey, where do I want this message to display? I want it to display on this section of the page. And so let me target that.
Okay. So that is a test. This is the whole thing?
In theory, this looks like it should pass.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you for the help, Tim.
Of course.
Hey, V, I just joined. Can you go back to your actual view page?
This one?
The one that you have this error message. Yeah, okay. Cool.
Yeah, so we assigned an ID in that paragraph tag. If you wanted to, I think this is a good way to do it. And if you wanted to wrap the entire Flash, like all Flash, like say you maybe had like multiple Flash message that we're going to show, then the problem with this would be your error message is not dynamic. So ID error, if you had multiple flash messages displaying, then your ID of error message would be duplicated a few times. So what you could do is wrap the entire each end block in a section or a content tag or a div, and then give that an ID. And then now you're targeting inside one ID at all times. That is, there's only going to be one of them.
Cool. Thank you.
And the same logic should apply for when you're trying to tell the test to click a button and there are several buttons. Like you should be able to use within an ID in your view.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly.
So I went through this and I implemented it all in my project. The only thing that I don't really have experience with is the within block. I'm guessing that might have happened in the class that I had to miss. Is that the best resource to look that stuff up?
Yeah, and so the key with the within block is you need a way to target a specific area on the page. So you can target it by element, you can target it by class, you can target it by ID. But the key is when I say like use a within block to target the flash message, you also need to have assigned an ID or a class on the specific element that either wraps the message or wraps the entire collection of flashes.
And are you going to go through a quick example of that when we all get back together?
Yeah, I can. I imagine someone will probably have. I'm going to go over the first 2 bullet points basically, and those. I imagine that someone will have implemented it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Need for an applications index page in this project? Like, is that handled through admin?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Refresh myself of what all is in the project. Yeah, I think it's more of the show pages are your main pages.
Flash stuff, which is great, but can't we just attach error messages to our like actual data models? Like validate and spit out this error message if it's not valid.
Trying to understand where the point, which part you would like to attach it to that you're not.
Yeah, so if we make a model and we have validates, this is numericality and it's an integer greater than 0. I thought you can add an error message in that model that says like, hey, spit this out if that's not happening. Like why do this over that?
Well, you can do that at the model level, but that's going to be attached to your errors now, right?
Okay.
That's going to be attached to that errors object and populated in there, but you'll still need a way to display it to the view. Like you don't just get all of that displayed. So that's kind of like where the flash comes in as a way to display to the view and also not persist that message in the view.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, it looks like we've got most of y'all back. Yeah, I'd love to see what y'all came up with. Even we might just, if it's okay, start with you, Adam, because I feel like what you showed was probably cool to show.
Sure, 1 second. I'm gonna put it on the big screen. All right, start with my spec. Bullet 1 was add some tests with some withins, I believe. So I, in my spec, I have, I can't start an application without completing all the fields. Visit applications new, click submit. And I put within this new application, check for a button, and within flash notice, check for this error message, which I just changed. My error message is going to look a little different. So what are these 2 things? New application. I went to my form. I'm going to change this to a form with, but I put a section ID new application for my new form. So then it says, hey, look within that and check for this button. Same thing for flash dash notice for my sort of flash text. I did the same thing. So, and V, you were helpful in this, looking at your example, but in my layout document, there's a flash notice section with flash.each do. Don't really know what's going on here, but I'm learning, and I caught this from the lesson. But basically, I attached this here so it looks in my flash message for a specific error. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Can we, so when you're saying, I don't really know what's going on in here, but I got it from the lesson, what can we do to get some more information in there?
Yeah, so I'm guessing this is looking at each of my flash messages and printing out the message.
Yeah. So let's, right? How about, yeah, that's right. So why don't we do this? Let's throw a pry within that each block.
Cool.
And remember, it's got to be within the lobster clause.
Right
well,
here.
I would put it on its own line.
Cool.
And within lobster clause. Yeah.
It's not working. Cool. All right. Cool. Just fill out my form. Actually, I think I have another pry here, so let me take that out. Where's my other one?
Cool.
Okay.
All right, so let's inspect this flash, right? Let's start with the actual object. Let's start with the flash. Cool. Action dispatch flash messages, and then it looks like there are there's some instance variables there and some alerts called flashes. Okay, so then let's look at this type. So we can't necessarily do it there because we don't have access to it in that way. But if we look at our pry, or we look at this view, actually, this application.html.erb. So we're in here and we've defined a block variable named type in message. So we get those, we get access to those, like just by calling type or message within this block. Cool.
I see.
So this is an alert, and if you on the left side of the screen, let's pull up your controller, your applicant's controller. Cool, and it's an alert type because you've defined it that way as part of your redirect. Cool. You said it's an alert. Cool. So then let's see what the message is. Cool. So it's got all of those. It basically, you joined all the error messages in here and made it one message in there. And now that is indeed what the message is for this flash.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Any questions about what Adam showed us? All right. Anyone do anything slightly different that they want to talk about or show? Yeah, let's hear from Gus.
Okay, so with that same issue of having like multiple messages. So on the controller, not there, I just did application.errors.full messages. So then it has that array of all the messages. And so when you call flash, then you get an array that you can then iterate through. And I don't know if that's, I mean, it looks a little bit clunky, but like it works. I don't know. The other thing I noticed is like this document that came with the project, like it basically had, like if you look at the original, that you have a header in the head that never ends. And so it results in everything being yielded in the header of the page. So that's not ideal. So I changed that, but
that is not ideal. I think that's just a typo from us. So apologies on that.
Yeah. But yeah, I was playing around with like by giving it an ID of errors. And I did a list so that they're like bullet pointed. But then I added, like, I was playing around with different like formatting for that. So this is kind of what you end up with if it's large, but yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful though, right? Bullet points of what we got wrong, which I think is helpful to the user to see, and in red, which kind of like indicates immediately that we've made some mistakes there.
Cool. So you just put an each loop underneath your flash.each. Cool.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, and I also found somewhere, I'm trying to like kind of work through in my mind like what the advantages of doing it one way or another, but I found somewhere that instead of doing like a flash messages on this document, that they basically had a partial that was like, you know, like shared errors basically, where they did some of the same thing, which I guess it depends on like what kinds of errors you're trying to render, like to do it one way or another. But I guess if this is the only kind you have, this is probably simpler than doing a partial.
Yeah, and so this is a good like thinking about dry, right? Like this is pretty dry. We put the flash in the application .html.erb, and it renders all the flash messages. But for certain views, we might want certain different styles or different types of error messages. And so in that case, we might want to say like, okay, like for these views, let's use this partial for our flash. And then maybe for these other views, let's use this partial for our flash. And so that's like another design decision that might make sense depending on kind of like the context of how you want to display alerts, notices, warnings, errors, things like that. Cool. Sam, I saw you had your hand up. Still got something on your mind? Thanks for sharing, by the way, Gus.
I just ran into some rendering logic or lack of logic, essentially, where I threw the flash.now error under the render. So it kind of opened my eyes to how render actually works, because the error wasn't showing whatsoever if you were to render first and show the error after. So it seems like it overrides what's being rendered, or essentially, if you were to render first and show the flash error, it won't show whatsoever. Whereas if you were to flash .now error equals and have the message show and then render, it should show the error.
Yeah, that's a good nuance to point out, and like a good way to this is like how you figure things out, right? About how the Rails application is working, right? Like you switched two lines of code with one another and said like, all right, like what happens now? And basically the flash was not attached to that rendered response in one version of it where the render is above the flash, and then it is in the other version where the flash is above the render. So that's a cool thing to like notice. And that is, I implore you to tinker with like what, how the code is set up and what changes when you make like subtle changes like that. Okay, Alex, what's up?
So just kind of a quick question, if I can share screen real quick.
Yep.
I just tried to copy the context of how to do the within block really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, so I think I got it right. I figured out that I needed to put this section ID in, and it appears to function. Like if I go to make a new app and I submit it, it's not required.
Cool.
Or, I mean, it renders correctly. But when I run the test, I'm getting this error.
Yep.
So I don't know if it means I didn't set it up correctly.
I think that is what that means, is you did not set it up correctly, because you are visiting a show page and this action is happening after a create happens. So there's no flash on that current test that you've set up because you are going straight to a show page. You're not creating an application there. You're visiting a specific application that you know about on 63.
Okay.
Does
So
that make sense?
makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. I think this is funny. Yeah, Brian, the chat's being funny right now. Brian's like,
sorry for distracting you.
No, it's good. I'm pretty sure Alex has my background, is what I'm guessing is going on there.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna stop the recording. We're done with that's it for class. And then I'm gonna stop this